thank you very much, David, for joining me today. Maybe you could just introduce yourself, let us know your name, where you're from, and how long you've been in business.
Okay, well, I'm Dave Powell. I'm in New Albany, Indiana, which is southern Indiana, right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. And I've been in business almost 4 years. I launched in March of 2017.
So the purpose of the interview today is really to get a picture of what it was like in your first few months. So if you think back to kind of that time and some of the efforts you put in, and you've had such great success since then, and we want to be able to learn from that. So maybe as you think back to when you first launched your business, what were the first 3 months like for you in terms of your mental focus? Were you prepared for it? Did it meet your expectations? Did you have a clear plan that you had devised? Maybe just talk a bit about your mental process at that point.
Okay, and I guess I probably should say that I'm generally an optimist. So
Okay.
I guess when I'm thinking back on things, I'm also, thinking of them as positive experiences. But I guess, yes, I felt like that I was prepared. I knew what to expect. And maybe part of it, I guess later in my life, I'm 52 years old. So, I was getting this up and running, at 48. I've spent the last 25 years in a managerial role doing marketing as well. And so I kind of knew what to expect to go out and sell a business. So now I'm just doing it on my own versus getting paid to do it, generating a salary. That was probably the biggest difference, is not having a solid income coming in, because now I'm out working on myself. And I was prepared. I had saved up some money and knew that I had some savings to live on. So that also made me feel more comfortable, because I knew, let's see, how do I say that? I guess I had something to fall back onto. I knew I had some savings, so that's also what made me feel comfortable with what I was, about to launch.
Sure, there's always a bit of anxiety, but you're kind of prepared for it. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So we often talk in training about, the time before launch and the time after launch, and we're always sort of training against, here's what we want you to do, here's what you plan on doing. So I'm going to ask you sort of a two-part question is, what were you thinking before and what did you actually do? So maybe just first, before you launched, what were a couple of things you were planning on focusing on? What did you think was going to be most important?
I guess what I was planning on focusing on was making phone calls. I guess lots of things. You're looking at everything. So I was going to make phone calls. I was going to do office visits, go to open houses, and really try to introduce myself and pillar to post to the real estate agents. Probably what I found out that I focused on was more office visits and open houses, and not the phone calls. I started making a lot of phone calls, but those quickly fell off as I started getting out and visiting offices.
Yeah, so, and that goes right into the next question, which was in thinking about those activities, I was going to say, what tactics and strategies work best. So maybe just talk a bit more about, what didn't work necessarily with the phone calls and why the office visits and open houses really did work for you.
I think really the way sometimes some of those phone calls fell off is, I got a lot of voicemails. I was not necessarily reaching the individual and able to talk to them. So I was leaving messages. Where at an office, I could actually interact with somebody. At an open house, especially, I could interact with somebody. And so, I think I was more successful with going to an open house. That's probably was my most successful, was going to open houses, because I could be right there talking with an agent and interacting with them. At an office, I could still interact with them, but sometimes, they were busy doing something. So, trying to catch them when they're not in the middle of something else was a little harder. At an open house, they're kind of captive. They're there. And as I said, the phone calls fell off just because I was getting a lot of voicemails.
Yeah, it's funny when something doesn't succeed, it's sort of easier to, drop it off. And when something is working, you stick with it. So, how do you make sure you consistently stick with it? We often find that, a new franchisee might, they'll follow the program initially, they'll start out of the gate with the stuff they're supposed to do. And maybe you just kind of touched on that was, hey, if it's not working, I drop it. If it is working, I stick with it. So what was your mindset or your strategy really to make sure that you were going to, once you realized the open houses and office visits were working, what did you do to make sure you stuck with that?
I guess just kind of plan it out. I'd kind of plan the week and then even plan individual days. I generally was doing 15 open houses a week, um, and not open houses, I'm sorry, office visits, 15
Right.
office visits a week. And then open houses, if I can get 6, that's pretty successful. I mean, because they're squeezed into that 2-hour window. And so sometimes it's hard to get from one to another and spend some quality time there at the open house. And I generally don't like to show up right at the end. Say it ends at 4 o'clock. I don't want to walk in there at 10 minutes of 4, with a box of snacks to say, here's some snacks to get you through your afternoon when they're done. Sometimes, especially now that it's been a little while, if I know the agent, I might stop in, near the end just to say, here's some snacks for your ride home, or for once you get home. But not necessarily at the beginning when I was trying to introduce myself, or even now if I'm introducing myself, if it's someone I haven't met yet.
Do you still do a lot of open house and office visits to this day? Is that still a core part of your marketing?
I do. And of course with the COVID and over the last 8 months, I guess that dynamic has changed a little bit. Open houses and office visits did stop for a little while, but then I got those started back up. In Indiana, we're still open, I guess you could say. There are a few offices that are closed that they won't even let you in, but most of the offices are open. There are fewer agents there than they used to be. So really, I went from what I had been doing, that 15 had dwindled to 10, and then had dwindled to 5 a week. And that was just because I'm more established. I don't want to visit the office as often as I was. But with COVID, I started actually going to 5 every other week, just because, like I said, some of the offices aren't open, some of the agents aren't there. Open houses, I was going out every single Sunday, in the beginning, and those have dwindled down to, 2 to 3 Sundays a month, depending on the month and what my personal activities are. But if it's been a few weeks because the family's doing something, I make sure I get back to it, because those really were my most productive, to be able to introduce myself to agents. And really, a lot of the open houses have your newer agents that are there. And so it's nice to get introduced to a new agent. And they might not have a lot of buyers right off the bat, but when they do start having buyers, they remember you and start using you. Because there might be someone that aren't already using an inspector.
Maybe just touch on that a bit about the maintaining of the relationship. I think that's something that's important when you're first getting going. We talk a lot about getting your foot in the door to get that first inspection, and once you do the second one, it's a big sign that, hey, that agent trusted you. You did well enough in the first one to earn the second one. So what kind of things did you do to keep that relationship strong? How do you maintain that once you've got your foot in the door and done the first inspection?
I guess it's just really trying to maintain some contact. When you are at the office looking that agent up, I was doing a follow-up phone call after every single inspection, or a thank you card. So after every inspection, I was sending out a card, thanking them for the referral, a follow-up phone call, after the inspection, just to see if there was any questions I could answer. Then sometimes as I was getting more and more referrals from that agent, maybe that thank you card was once a month, and I would thank them for all the inspections. And I usually tried to use the client's name, the buyer's name. Thank you for referring, this person, whoever that person was. And then, like I said, I guess, hitting them at the office. Now I've been doing those bomb videos after the inspection. Just a quick little summary. I will just, instead of phoning them, because again, sometimes you get voicemail. And when you say, do you have any questions? They might say, well, I haven't seen the report yet. No, I don't have any questions. And so the video was really nice to be able to, I just send a, 1.5 to 2 minute video saying, let me just kind of give you a quick summary of the inspection. And I hit the highlights and then just let them know if they have any other questions as they review the full report to let me know. And I've got a huge response from those videos. A lot of people love those videos because
Awesome.
again, it's like being there, because now you don't really have a conversation. There's no one talking back to you, but they can hear you explain it versus just read it off the report.
Yeah, when we can't be there in person, it's a great substitute. They can see your face, hear your voice, and it feels as real as you can get without actually being there. So that's
Right.
BombBomb has been a great tool. Glad to hear you using that. To go back for a second, you were talking about the consistency of the open houses and office visits. Tell me a bit about your own sort of goal setting plan. You kind of touched earlier about saying I would set up my week and sometimes set up my day. Just maybe talk through a bit about your own goal setting. What kind of goals did you set? How often do you review them? On a bigger picture of the business as a whole. Maybe just talk a bit about that.
So I guess the goal setting, in the beginning was, I said if I wanted to hit this many offices, it was, laying out what those offices were, and so that I could kind of rotate through them. And then if that office was closed or there was nobody there, getting them on the schedule for the next week to go back to them and substituting them. And so I guess that's the kind of the review is, especially as I thin down a little bit, is who have I not been to in a while? And some of the offices, and I probably have 6 to 10 that are right here local that I can hit pretty easy. And then I'm getting into about a 30-minute drive to go hit some others. And so the ones that were farther away, it's making sure that they do stay on the calendar and get into a rotation. Because as I got busier, it wasn't just, hey, I've got all day, go hit some offices. Now I'm trying to squeeze them between inspections. So I've got a 2-hour window between inspections. And so the ones that were farther away were harder to get to. And so those really had to go onto the calendar to say, okay, I don't have an inspection, Thursday afternoon, that's when I'll hit those offices. Well, then I end up booking an inspection. And so then it's okay, now let's get them Friday morning or Monday morning. And so it's just making sure I get back to the ones that were farther away.
Yeah, I think that's a key part we talk about is often, a new guy, an inspection will bump a marketing activity they had planned in the schedule. And we always encourage, make sure you find a place to get it back in the schedule. It's okay to take the inspection and take, move the marketing activity that's there, but make sure you're committed to getting it back in there, because if you keep letting them slide, you end up with that slump where I've done a bunch of inspections, I haven't done any marketing, and then all of a sudden the inspections start to dry up and you wonder why, because you put the marketing on the back burner. So yeah, that's exactly that. If you were to start all over again, Dave, is there anything you would do differently knowing what you know now?
I'd probably stay on those phone calls a little bit more than I did, and then some follow up with agents, because as I would get in and see an agent, maybe they would get one of the free inspections, and then if I didn't hear from them, I would try to call them up and see how things went. A lot of times it was, well, they're already working with another inspector, but they'll keep me as an alternative. But sometimes, especially as things would get moving, I might not get a chance to get back to that agent. And then after too much time passed, I didn't necessarily want to call them up and say, hey, how come I haven't heard from you in a while or something like that. So there's a balance between that. I mean, yes, you can call them and just see how things are going, but I don't want it to have had too much time to pass and then call and say, how are things going? Because then they think, well, geez, why did it take you 6 months to call me or something like that. So it would probably, stay on the phone calls to introduce myself and really get follow-up phone calls worked into the schedule better than I probably did.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone new who's about to start, what would you say?
Following up with the agents. I mean, I feel like I did well following up, but I know I probably could have done better. So, we talked about things on the schedule, going to open houses, going to office visits, but making sure that follow-up communication gets onto the schedule. And really, we're talking about marketing, but the other thing might be more ride-alongs, more actual, not practice inspections, but ride-alongs to see somebody else doing the work. I really learned a lot from the couple that I went on, but I think I could have learned more going on more ride-alongs.
Yeah, that's great advice. We're always trying to set those up. Sometimes it's just a logistical challenge depending on where you're located, but that's always good feedback. It's such a great experience to see the inspection happening firsthand. So awesome.
Right.
That's all the questions I have for you, Dave. Is there any other feedback you wanted to give? Any other comments? Anything you'd share with new franchisees who are sort of apprehensive and getting ready to go on this? Any other pearls of wisdom you'd share?
I think just stick with it, stay positive. There are ups and downs. I mean, seasonally, there's ups and downs to the business, but especially as a new inspector, being up and down. And I guess when you do get those inspections, stay on top of it, like we were talking about that follow-up. So free, and I noticed that, you've got in here, when I started, it was kind of a 25 free inspections was kind of the goal, and I ended up doing 37, but I see you've got 40 now as free inspections. But 37, when I did that over the 25 goal, I mean, I think that's one reason I was successful, is because I did so many more. And so you have the opportunity for that repeat agent, because not every agent's going to be a repeat, even from that free inspection. And when you do get an inspection with a new agent, even now, almost 4 years, when I get an inspection with a new agent, it's following up with that agent, again, thanking them for the referral. How did things go? Do you have questions? So that you can generate that into another repeat. Especially in the busy season, I'm not going to be, I've got lots of agents that I'm their first inspector, but several others that I'm their backup. And so I'm more than happy to be the backup, because that gets my foot in the door again, and I can work my way into their primary inspector, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great feedback about the free inspections. Something we believe so strongly. We did up the goal, as you noticed, because it just gets your foot in the door. The best marketing you can do is that first inspection. So whatever it takes to get that opportunity. So we really try to drive that through training to say, hey, whatever it takes to do that inspection, it's going to open the door to so many more opportunities for you down the road. So that's great feedback. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, David. That's all the questions I had for you. I appreciate you taking the time with me today. Wish you continued success, and thanks again for today.
All right. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, David. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.